Aliens. Life beyond Earth. It's an idea that's been in the heads of humans since we've been able to look at the sky and wonder what the heck is up there. Are we alone? Is something out there? Are they friendly or not? Can another planet support intelligent life? Is it possible they've been to Earth and we have yet to figure that out? Could they be walking on Earth right now, hiding in plain sight? I don't know where I'm going with this. Men in Black is a media franchise covering several movies released between 1997 and 2019. The franchise itself has its roots in a small series of comic books released between 1990 and 1991. The comic titled The Men in Black was created by Lowell Cunningham after a friend told him about the concept of the Men in Black itself, a concept popular among conspiracy theorists and pop culture about a supposed government agency whose sole purpose is to keep the existence of aliens a secret from the general public by any and all means necessary. A common topic when discussing things like the Roswell UFO incident of 1947 and military bases like Area 51. The first Men in Black movie would be produced by Columbia Pictures and released on July 2nd, 1997, starring Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith as Agent K and J respectively. The plot follows NYPD officer James Edwards as he joins the Men in Black and works with K to stop an alien from stealing a miniaturized galaxy and opening Earth to total destruction. This movie came out 25 years ago, so leave your spoiler warnings at the door. The movie itself was a critical and commercial success, generating a worldwide box office gross of $589 million against its budget of $90 million. Sequels would go on to be made in later years, with the most recent being Men in Black International as of 2019. With any popular media franchise comes the tie-in video games, to which Men in Black is no stranger to. Today I present to you Men in Black the Game for PC. Released in November of 1997 for Windows PCs in North America and in April of 1998 for PS1 exclusively in PAL regions. The game was developed by Gigawatt Studios and published by South Peak Interactive, both studios known for developing and publishing licensed and bargain bin junk, so that bodes well. I honestly couldn't find that much about Gigawatt online. Most places I was looking at seemed to be inconsistent about what games they made, and there's very little information behind their founding or creation. The most concrete information I was able to dig up was the games they developed. Men in Black was their first title, and they've only produced a handful of games. An Animorphs game for
Windows PC,
Secret Agent Barbie, Pinky and the Brain World Conquest, and the Roller Coaster Simulator Ultimate Ride before disappearing by 2002. As for South Peak, they existed between 1996 and 2013, far outlasting Gigawatt. As mentioned, they primarily published and licensed mediocre to okay at best titles. They did seem to do okay as a publisher for most of their history, but legal battles in the late 2000s and early 2010s eventually caused losses and led to the company being delisted from the American Stock Exchange in 2011. The last game published by the company would be Stronghold 3 on October 25th, 2011, before the company eventually vanished by 2013. Movie-based games are generally of weak to mediocre quality, so I did not have the highest hopes going into this. You don't hear about them as much these days unless it's some truly big-budget production, the recent Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy games being a couple examples off the top of my head, riding off the heels of the MCU movies and that one Unreal Engine Matrix demo. Movie games usually won't come across your mind unless you seek them out or stumble upon an ad for them. If you were growing up during the GameCube PS2 era or simply had the honor of owning any handheld pre-3DS, there's a good chance you have a movie game lying around somewhere. I remember commercials for them as well as being a kid and getting these types of games for birthdays and such. Men in Black is one game, like many before, that I tried a few times before giving up on. After finishing it, I fully get why. I started recording this game in November. It is April. Men in Black the game was an adventure and a half, and not in a good way. You're ready, I'm not. Let's begin. My adventure began with exploring the disk itself. Games were a lot simpler back then, with a lot of the game's data being in more common and easily accessible formats. You have access to everything that appears in this game, from textures, pictures, game HUD data, dialogue, and scans of real faces. Speaking of which, look at this! Who ran Will over with a steamroller? Installing the game was an adventure and a half because while the game would install on Windows, it wouldn't work. I was still on Windows 10 when I first recorded it, but compatibility mode didn't help that much because while I could get to the intro animations, the game kept crashing every time I got to the main menu. After some experimenting in various ways, I finally decided it was a good idea to pay attention to the error I was getting and realized I was running into a graphics problem. The game relies on Direct Draw, an aspect of DirectX that focuses specifically on 2D rendering. The Men in Black menu is exclusively in 2D, so the crashes make total sense here. I eventually turned to other software like DxVrapper, a program that translates older DirectX instructions to the more recent DirectX 11. It unfortunately didn't get me anywhere, so some more Google foo later, I found a tool on GitHub that actually worked. It's called DxWrapper, and from what I can tell works similarly to DxVrapper in that it helps older games using versions of equally older DirectX versions run better on Windows 10. I downloaded the program, turned on a couple switches in the INI file, and the game worked flawlessly. Even after updating to Windows 11, which I expected to break everything, still worked. I'll put a link to the download in the description. I wouldn't have been able to get this game working without it. The game starts off with a stylized cutscene in this comic book art style, which gives us a very brief synopsis of the beginning of a reported robbery in a New York City apartment, to which Jay responds to. All the game's major cutscenes are like this. I initially thought this style was paying homage to the original comic, which would have been a pretty nice touch on Gigawatt's part, but I was able to find scans of the books online and the style doesn't line up at all. Not to say I'm not going to give credit where credit is due, these cutscenes look okay for what they are and the style isn't bad. I want to say it could still be an homage to comics in general since that's the series' origin, but I can't be entirely sure. We're immediately dropped into the first level with no warning or tutorial as soon as this cutscene ends and we're given control of Jay. After turning on the game, I'm immediately reminded why I didn't like it as a kid. The first area wasn't as dark as I remember, probably could have just been the CRT monitor I had back then, but controlling this game takes a bit of getting used to, especially on a keyboard. This was one of those early 3D games before WASD became standard, so your movement is with the arrow keys. Most of your control is done with the arrow keys and some combination of Control or Alt. You can fight, jump, open and move through inventory, and interact with the environment through the spacebar. If we open said inventory, we have medkits and a gun. Weapons are on the left, while healing and game items are on the right. You go into this apartment and immediately need to beat the tar out of the first guy you see. The combat here is a bit gross early on. It's a control scheme you have to spend some time learning on a keyboard, but once you have an understanding of it, it's honestly still kinda gross. You essentially have your right hand on the arrow keys to move, fair enough, but if you want to run to get out of the way, you have to press shift. Left shift specifically. So your hand is basically spread eagle all the way across the keyboard with your thumb on the right alt and your pinky on left shift. If you have big hands, this might not be the worst, but I still wouldn't call it ideal. The concept of this level is to chase down a criminal, simple enough, but sometimes it isn't the most clear on where to go. What you have to do is go through this apartment, beat up the guy in there, defuse this bomb by taking off the wire at a very specific point, otherwise you go back to the first room and hear a weak one-liner about cops.
What? You didn't bring donuts?
Beat him up, go to the next room, and learn how to use the gun. If you equip it, you go into this aiming stance when holding the combat key. Aiming is somewhat automatic, sort of not. If you point at the general direction of an enemy, you can shoot them if you see this crosshair. Your ammo is limited, but you have the benefit of not needing to reload and the ability to find more ammo off of defeated enemies and on the ground in the form of pickups. You then partake in a nighttime New York City tradition by going out onto the fire escape and jumping into the conveniently located dumpster. At least, that's what you're supposed to do, but I had a hard time figuring that out. It was initially obvious at first that you had to get off the fire escape to proceed, but you can't just fall down. If you do, you get a game over. I spent a good while trying to understand what to do before I realized you're actually supposed to jump off the balcony, not just fall. We end up in a situation where the gun is mandatory as we're going against two men near a car who also have guns. I killed them both and my brain broke again as I tried to figure out how to get out. Logic dictated I could probably just jump out, but no. What you're supposed to do is put the gun away and kick down the front of the dumpster. Okay, how was I supposed to know this without guessing? You run through the nearby alley, beat up a few more guys, and climb on some boxes to get to the rooftops. I did some more fighting and fell to my death again. Jumping was needed to proceed, which I thankfully learned quickly. Once we get to the last rooftop, we have our first boss.
End of the line, Twinkle Toes.
I've got 8 bullets here, so this should at the very least knock out most of his health. What? Okay, look, I know this is a boss fight and all, but even then, what the heck is this? I expected it to take less damage, but not that much less. Look at the health bar. Punches and kicks do more damage. So this guy is a little more agile than anything else we've encountered so far and can actually attack faster, which, you know, I mean, okay, it's a boss. Fine, I get it. What ended up working for me was running around in circles and gradually whittling away his health. Once our foe's tummy ache takes him into the next life, K materializes out of nowhere and neuralizes us. And I mean that seriously, you can see the exact moment he spawns into the map. We're given another cutscene and a rundown of Jay being brought into the MIB. The audio mixing in this cutscene is just weird. What he's telling us is basically the mantra that was said just like in the movie, the whole "you don't exist, you were never born" shtick, but the music overpowers the dialogue most of the time so you can't understand what's being said.
Know it is over. You don't exist. You're never born. Anonymity is your name.
Imagine if I had the music at this volume every time I talked in one of my videos. Imagine if every video of mine sounded like this. Once the cutscene ends, we're dropped into the MIB HQ with no warning, Jay now in the suit that he makes look good. You have 3 things you can do here. Peek at the weapons to choose a loadout for your next mission, go shooting, or get briefed on your next mission and choose a new agent if you want. Alternatively, you can goof around with the game's camera changes. The game's plot, surprise surprise, is entirely unrelated to the movie as movie game tradition tends to be. Apart from the first level being kinda sorta related to the beginning of the movie, but not really, the game's plot is entirely original, with its own settings and antagonists apart from a few things such as characters involved in alien types. The game involves, as you'd expect, investigating phenomena or incidents that are the result of alien activity. As mentioned, your first mission was chasing down a criminal in the streets of New York, and I've already discussed what you do in it. Next level tasks you with going to a research station in the Arctic. The team has been silent for a week and needs a welfare check.
Nothing like a nice bracing wind to make you feel alive.
There's a hefty amount of wandering around and figuring out where to go. Your ultimate goal is to determine what happened to the crew stationed here. You get a shotgun at least, which is always fun. After getting some context clues and picking up some weird stuff scattered about, you find yourself turning on the power after killing what few humans are left here who have gone completely mental. After turning on the power, calling SOS via telegraph, and feeding the dog nearby, you go back to the first building and immediately get gassed to death. What you're supposed to do is figure out a way to turn on the security system, but the only context clues you have are the currently deactivated security system, this bedroom, pictures, and a terminal PC. The PC is password locked and you need to figure out how to get in to turn on the security system. I, no joke, was running around for about half an hour trying to figure out what to do and resorted to an online walkthrough. The password here, as it turns out, is Daisy, which can be found in the pictures near the same desk. The funny thing is, there's no indication or hint that this is the password. I feel like the game assumes you're meant to guess that just because this name happens to be written down next to the PC. I'll touch more on this later. Anyway, after turning on the surveillance system, you end up finding tracks through the snow that lead you to a hidden underground base. You go through killing and looting the aliens inside before rigging the self-destruct. You scramble around like a chicken with his head cut off and barely escape as the base explodes. You're then given a brief regarding the blood sample you found in the base. This leads into a third level taking you into the Amazon. Miners have reported that a non-human creature has been attacking down there and you have to go find out what the heck it is. Here's a rundown of my experience with this level. Get shot down by invincible guards, get patted down, beat the snot out of the local population, meet Francisco who asks you to get him out of town, go to the doctor, kill him in cold blood, steal his credit card, upset a homeless man.
Senor, venga.
Is it cocktail hour already?
I have no money to buy a ticket home. Please, you help me. Certainly you can take pity on an old man.
Sorry, but I gave at the office.
Welcome to hell, senor. You'll see.
Use an ATM, give Francisco the tickets, go to a secret wall behind the doctors, kill guards, jump to the roof, kill more guards, loot the building for information, sneak past sniper turrets, go up to the mine, beat up aliens, loot cave, endure a bullshit jumping puzzle, aliens, puzzle 2 electric boogaloo, go into secret temple, die, go into secret temple again, beat up invisible alien. Remember this picture? Puzzle 3 Revenge of the Sith, elevator with no music, a cockroach kid abducted, end level. I forgot to mention there's this priest that's actually an alien and the end of the interaction made me lose it.
Hasta mañana, baby.
What a character.
I have to go now. My planet needs me.
Next, you learn that the company that owns the mine is a front by a so-called Skip Frails, who is a multi-billionaire who runs a tech firm. Agent H was sent before you to go investigate this guy, but has not returned, so someone has to go pick him up and ask Frails what's going on. After climbing up 4 elevators and enduring some USDA prime grade bullshit thanks to constantly spawning alien bot things that shoot, which I could only stomach with cheat codes while solving a mirror puzzle, you end up fumbling around through a high-tech facility with more aliens and some more door puzzles. Eventually, you get to Agent H hanging upside down from the ceiling, and given how long he's probably been hanging like that, the blood probably pooled in his brain and he's dead. After beating up the only other human left in this building, he reveals himself to be an alien that you have to kill again. When you try to save H, the floor opens up and we're tossed in a one-on-one between you and Frails in a mech suit, which to me was not beatable in the position I was in without cheating. Frails drops some nonsense about building a PC underneath the background music.
I've created the most powerful computer in the world. Strike that. The universe.
Oh, so that's where all the GPUs were going. I want you all to know now that I cheated a lot while playing this game, and I am not sorry. There are some things in this game that are designed to be annoying that I frankly did not have the patience for, and I'm usually patient when it comes to games that do this. If my last video is any indication, I like trial and error, but this game has tested my limits in some spots. No shame, I popped the restore health cheat like I was being paid to do it, especially in the final boss since Frails can eat half your health in a couple of hits. When you beat Frails, he falls apart like a character in a LEGO game and you get one final talking to from Zed who says everyone's earned a nice 2-day vacation.
Good work, people. You are each instructed to take 48 hours of R&R which will not be counted against your vacation time. Enjoy the break, everyone. As always.
And the game ends. You're booted back to the main menu, and that's it. Men in Black the game begins its story and ends it across a whopping total of 4 levels. For a game that probably cost $20 to $40 assuming it wasn't immediately chucked into the discount bin at Staples upon release, that's embarrassing. Yeah, it was 1997, we can't be that hard on it, but here's a few other games that came out in 1997 for Windows and DOS in particular. Lego Island, Postal 1, the original Diablo, Fallout 1, Carmageddon, Quake 2, MDK, Age of Empires, Blood, The Curse of Monkey Island, Tomb Raider 2, the original GTA, and the PC version of Oddworld Abe's Odyssey. And that's just games for PC. I'll touch more on this game's length later, because I need to talk about gameplay. In a word, ew. This control scheme suffers a lot from old PC game genes where the controls are all over the place instead of one easy general area. Arrow keys, caps lock, function keys just for controls assuming you don't just hit escape, spacebar, control key, alt key, shift key on the other side of the keyboard, it's all just bleh. I can see why this game was ported to PS1 later down the line. This control scheme would make a lot more sense with a controller. Hold the shoulder button and use the directional buttons or something. You keep the same wacky control scheme but it makes a lot more sense. The amount of times you can easily resolve this, tools like X360 CE and DS4 Windows exist which allow for easy button mapping with a modern controller. Steam has it too right out of the gate, but this game has no gamepad support out of the box and I try to play the game as intended, with the keyboard in this case. And holy moly, the keyboard here sucks. The guns are functionally identical with varying degrees of usability. You also have access to the Neuralizer, the famous mind-wiping pen, which in this game serves as a way to stun enemies temporarily. If I were to describe melee combat briefly, in all seriousness, the combat is clunky since you have to hold another key on the keyboard to do any fighting and it makes you a sitting duck. While holding down the combat button, unless you're holding a gun, you can't move or turn at all. Each arrow key becomes one of 4 moves which you can do, which is either a punch, kick, or a guard. I don't know if I went nuts playing this game, but I am absolutely convinced that the kick is more viable than anything else. It has more reach than the punches do, and you're less likely to miss than with the punches, so if you're not throwing bullets at someone, you're more often than not kicking the universe into extinction. That's not to say the punches are entirely useless. If you have those opportune moments, you can do a quick combo just to shave off a little bit of extra health with the punches, but that's about it. Oh, and a special mention to L, whose kick is somehow worse than everyone else's. L is functionally identical to J and K, but for some reason L has a unique kick animation which, okay, it looks cool I guess, but it makes her kick a lot slower than it should be. The time to finish the animation causes 2 problems. It creates a larger window of attack for your opponent to knock off some of your health, and makes you more likely to miss with some enemies because by the time you're finished with your Beyblade impression, the enemy has already moved out of the way. Yeah, you can use the gun to make quick work of some encounters, but since ammo is limited to begin with, you need to save some of it for more risky encounters instead of blasting every enemy you find. Even the guns don't work too well. The aiming, while it works, can be a bit iffy. Sometimes you can be pointed directly at the enemy you want to shoot and the crosshair just won't feel like it, even at close ranges, which makes it very problematic if there's another enemy shooting at you at a spot where you need to shoot to make the area a little more bearable. Take the platforming segment in level 3 for instance. Not only do you have to time your jumps to get across, you have this fat idiot shooting at you the whole time, which can screw you up if you're not paying attention. Coming back to the core game, every mission boils down to the same thing. Go to this area, search the region for clues, some of which are blink and you'll miss it, pick up a thing, punch out a guy, kill this alien, lather, rinse, repeat 4 times. I understand that this is a gross oversimplification because there are some things that you need to do first, but this game as a whole is tedium. It doesn't feel satisfying when you solve a puzzle or finish a fight, and even then that only feels good because you get to go back to a vaguely normal control scheme again. The puzzles are kind of I wouldn't call them bad, but they're not necessarily great either. The game suffers from what I like to call blink and you'll miss it syndrome when it comes to them. There's certain aspects to puzzles where if you have no idea what you're supposed to do, you could spend a long time wandering around looking for one tiny thing you overlooked or couldn't see at all. An easy example is the computer in the Arctic base. I already mentioned there's no indication what the password to the PC is from what I could tell. Maybe I'm blind, maybe I'm stupid, maybe I was distracted by this calendar, but it feels like you're just supposed to make the connection yourself and just guess it. I'm not asking this game to tell me what I'm supposed to do outright, but there should be at the very least some nod to the correct direction. Be vocal about something, leave some more background information apart from what's happening in the base to the people working here. Yeah, there's some interesting bits from the researchers and even the doctor's reports, some of which are just outright horrifying, but that doesn't tell me anything. The PC belongs to Koenig, and the most concrete thing I could find to connect the password choice to him was this photograph, and the fact that he's scheduled to take care of the dogs for 2 different weeks during a 5-week period. Nothing else was present in the game's art folders to hint at this, and the audio didn't tell me anything either. If there was at least maybe some indication from one of the others about how much he loves this one specific dog out of the bunch apart from this photo, it would help. Another more egregious example is in the Amazon. There's a puzzle which requires 3 plates. There's a guide in one of the plates to grab in the buildings outside of the mine, and the other 2 plates are inside the mine. What you're supposed to do is drop the plate in the center and using the info sheet you got from the same building, step on the correct stones in the sheet to open this large door. In later recordings I got the first and second plates just fine, but plate number 3? Well, it's in this room. Now, tell me, look closely at this image for a bit and tell me, where is the plate? If you haven't found it yet, it's here. The plate blends in way too well with the background. Who was going to see this? I sure didn't. And again, no indication the plate is here. I was running up and down the mine going through this fucking jump puzzle back and forth looking for it. And that's not even my only problem with this level because, believe it or not, I managed to soft lock the game. Continuing with the plates, in my first attempt, I forgot to get a plate from the building. This little guy here. Plates have to go on the floor in a specific order to do this puzzle. I didn't realize I forgot the plate until I checked a walkthrough. Okay, no big deal. I could just go back and get the plate, right?
I'm done.
There is a firing squad outside of the mine. Why? No big deal. I'll just crack open the invincibility cheat, go back to town, and I can't open the door. Once you enter the mine, you're locked out of that portion of the level, and you can't go back. If you forget to get that plate, and you don't have a save that was in that part of the level, you have no choice but to start the level all over again at best, or the whole game at worst. However, we don't live in 1997. It's current year. The internet is much more widespread than it was back then, which means we can cheat like never before. To enable cheats, you have to pause the game and type Dougmatic until the game unpauses itself. Why Dougmatic? I genuinely cannot tell you. Is it a reference? An inside joke? I have no idea. Once the game tells you cheats are on, you have to pause the game again and type a special phrase which will then enable the cheat. I'll show them all on screen now. Once again, I am happily admitting to cheating in this game. I wanted to finish this game sooner rather than later. The heal me cheat was my best friend towards the end. I avoided use of the invincibility and infinite ammo cheats because that would have made the game way too simple. I only used the invincibility cheat once and that was to get past the hail of bullets outside the mine. Move Me was necessary to restart levels and get out of the soft lock. I refused to use it to progress through the game and skip levels, only to restart. There is an odd quirk with the agent cheats. I used this cheat to switch back to Agent L when I restarted a level after the aforementioned soft lock, but only because I spawned in a civilian attire J for some reason.
This is the thanks I get.
When I swapped agents, I was missing an item. Here's my inventory when I was playing as J, and here it is after going to L. My inventory was reset to basic weaponry and no other level specific items, so I wanted to be sure of something. Can this cheat code force a soft lock? So I did some experimenting. I loaded the Amazon, shot the doctor in cold blood, took his wallet, and then ran the code to switch back to J, and look! It's gone! I've never seen a cheat code actively break the game like this, let alone have it be a code that changes characters. But enough of my escapades in playing God. Let's talk about the assault on my eyes and ears brought on by this game. It's 1997, so I'm gonna be a little lenient. The game doesn't look that bad. The backgrounds on a lot of 2D images are pre-rendered CGI, which looks okay for the time period. This was smack in the middle of the PS1 era, and since new consoles wouldn't be out for a few more years, it was still pretty early relatively speaking. And if I were to compare it with the cutscenes of, say, Fallout 1, which released a month prior to this game, I'd argue the CGI is on par, though that game's visuals are a little more stylized than this in terms of 3D. The 2D images that are not pre-rendered pictures aren't great, but I'd chalk that up more to general aging, tech limitations, and the fact that this was Gigawatt's first game, so I imagine they didn't have much manpower or money to invest into higher quality graphics. Everything serves its purpose for what it is, though I will say, some of the game's art, it ain't amazing. I imagine these inventory screens look fine on a CRT, but when blown up onto a 1080p LCD monitor, they aren't exactly the greatest looking things on earth. Plus, some of the imagery just isn't great to begin with. You can clearly tell this image of Jay on the inventory screen is just drawn on top of one of the other ones. L's honestly looks fine, and so does K, though to a lesser extent. He looks like the G-Man. There are little details that I honestly can appreciate, mainly in the form of the game over screens. Each area does have at least one unique game over screen relevant to a specific way which you can lose, which, to be fair, is not groundbreaking by any stretch of the imagination, especially by this point, but little details like that I can, again, absolutely appreciate, even if they are simple animations. But there is one that, it's easier if I show you. The game is a shooting gallery where you can learn the game's combat mechanics, which I would have rather gotten prior to level 1, but it's still good to have. Unlimited ammo, and you can spend as much time as you want until you lose or win. The game over screen looks like this when you lose. Bug-Em options menu, eat your heart out. This is the best worst game over screen I have seen up to this point. The disgusting color contrast with the freaking impact meme font made me crack up in the dead of night. I'm not saying that I could do better, but I could literally make this in Medibang Paint in 2 minutes. And I can prove it.
Ready? Go!
Most of the music in the game is ambient noise and is also compressed a little bit. It's par for the course for the time period, if anything, and it's not much to blow smoke over. But the music, what little there is. It's okay. As for sound effects, yeah, the sound effects alright. Dialogue-wise, the characters are always saying something in regards to the environment or the things going on around them. The voice acting is honestly meh at best when going through the levels. It's not too bad to complain about, but not mind-blowing either. I will complain about one thing though. Whoever was voicing L was phoning it in. And you can tell.
The customer's always wrong. Is that your policy? Don't mind if I do. I'm done. Got me. I'm warning you. This is making me mad.
Contrast this with the voice lines for J and K.
Now you can rest all you want.
I love New York. This is the thanks I get.
Let's rumble.
If Zed could see me now.
Don't these mushrooms ever quit?
Well, that didn't help one bit.
Maybe you haven't noticed, but this place is about to do a July 4th on us, and I'd just as soon get the hell out of here before it does.
Granted, they're not that much better, but it feels like there's at least some attempt at emotion or personality in the voice lines. Elle sounds bored or annoyed half the time. It's like her VA was just waiting for the check and did the bare minimum. The one-off characters sound okay. Whoever was voicing Francisco did an okay job.
Beat it. I have no money.
Are you Francisco?
I told you I have no money.
I don't want money. I want information.
You? Information?
But Frails...
I must say, you people are quite persistent. Little minds never learn. See, progress is like a steamroller. You get in its way, you get rolled over. Simple as that.
Man chewed the scenery like a piece of gum. I don't want to be too mean. Whoever voiced him was clearly trying to have fun with it and hammed it up for that insane tech billionaire role. For something like Men in Black, which was billed as a sci-fi action comedy when the movie came out, that's fine. If anything, I'd encourage that too. It makes me glad I played the final boss as J instead of L. If I did that, I wouldn't nearly be as kind. From the reviews and descriptions of this game I've read online, I see people call this game survival horror. If this game is survival horror, then Midtown Madness 2 is a realistic driving sim. I could see the survival horror elements, the ammo and healing item scarcity, the enemy encounters where you need to think quickly to save your skin, certain musical cues, one of which actually did manage to make me jump the first time, but the problem is the game doesn't play well and the style of the game doesn't suit the universe it's set in, and it feels pretty damn boring for what you're doing in it. For the obvious comparison, let's look at the original Resident Evil since this came out around a year earlier. I decided to spend 1 hour with the original Resident Evil completely blind. My experience with the series begins and ends at RE5, so consider this first impressions on the original game in its purest form, with Men in Black being my only frame of reference. I had more fun in that single hour than in all the time I spent with Men in Black. It plays very similarly. It makes sense why MIB was ported to the PlayStation because the control scheme is very familiar with what I experienced in my playthrough. You have 10 controls with the D-pad, a dedicated run button, inventory that takes you away from the action, a specific button that you hold to enter a combat stance with the directional buttons changing what you do dependent on if you're using melee or a firearm. But the control scheme works here because we have a proper controller to work with. This type of control scheme was designed with the traditional gamepad in mind. Resident Evil was designed as a console game from the ground up from the point of its inception. It translates fine enough to a keyboard, but it doesn't feel natural like it does on a PlayStation controller. To not have gamepad support out the box, let alone have the ability to change which keys do what on the keyboard, feels like a major oversight. It would probably still feel clunky, but whatever I could set it to would still feel more natural than the current scheme. In some ways, MIB is easier than Resident Evil. I'd argue I could shoot enemies faster, I don't have to worry about reloads, and having a non-limited inventory is always nice. But in Resident Evil, everything was limited. Ammo, healing items, inventory space, even the ability to save. It made me want to be conservative about what I had and what I could take with me. What should I leave behind for now? What do I know I'm going to need later? Do I use an ink ribbon now, or do I risk losing everything I've done in order to push further? I actually felt like I needed to be careful with how I progressed lest I make a mistake and lose everything. I didn't feel that way in Men in Black. Yeah, ammo was limited, but it felt more like a nuisance than anything. I've mentioned that in some cases you'd think a gun would be more helpful, it actually sometimes isn't, so you're better off just doing the riskier hand-to-hand combat anyway. A survival horror game should frighten the player even a little bit through setting, ambiance, and mood on top of the gameplay, and that was not happening in Men in Black. Yeah, the settings and background info were weird, but I wouldn't call it scary. It felt pretty on brand for Men in Black most of the time, and the series isn't exactly known for horror. Wandering through the underground areas plastered wall to wall with alien nonsense felt typical, like it's supposed to be here because the aliens are here. I didn't feel unnerved or think anything was out of place. I mean, yeah, this stuff is clearly out of place with everything else, but for someone in the position of an MIB agent, I wouldn't call this a horror setting. I call it a night at work. You know there's alien nonsense afoot. It's just a matter of you finding it first, and when you do, you don't go, oh dear god, what the hell is going on? You go, oh good, I'm getting close to the end. Look at Resident Evil and the mansion it's set in. You have unknown creatures running around outside and what appears to be zombies inside what is an otherwise fairly normal looking mansion for the most part. You're part of a special ops team, and as far as you and anyone else was concerned, you were just investigating why another team had gone dark after investigating strange murders in Raccoon City. Members of your team are missing and you have to look for wherever they may be while the story unfolds around you instead of everything being spoon-fed to you right then and there. Everything feels concise and carried together throughout the game as you gradually piece together what was going on inside the mansion the more you search. While playing as Chris, I managed to get far enough to read the Keeper's diary, detailing his infection and gradual transformation into a lumbering, flesh-hungry beast. Not only did it serve as a good piece of background to what was really going on in the mansion, it was a genuinely frightening read as I see him start off coherent to suffering from an unknown infection to barely being able to string together anything resembling a sentence. Speaking of monsters, in Men in Black, when an enemy went down, and I was sure of it. I didn't have to worry about it then. In Resident Evil 1, yeah, an enemy could slump over and die, but it could just come right back up again. It made me reconsider combat in that game. Do I waste my time pumping lead into zombies on the chance I might be safe? Or do I maneuver my way around them and save the effort and ammo for something I have to fight? The game kicked my ass up and down the street. I died way more than I should have, but I still felt like I wanted to continue. There's still more mazes of doors in the mansion to go through, so if one spot isn't working out, I can always go somewhere else and try to progress. Contrast with Men in Black, where whenever I died, I felt annoyed that I lost progress and had to do certain segments all over again. This feeling was somewhat mitigated by save scumming, but again, no satisfaction in finishing the hurdle. Just frustration. I have to go this way, I don't have any other choices. I think this is why Men in Black suffers as much as it does. It's too linear and it doesn't leave enough background info. There's one set path you have to take and nothing is used to point you in the right direction or hint at what's going on until you discover that direction. This game wants to be Resident Evil, but it doesn't understand what made Resident Evil enjoyable. It doesn't feel like survival horror. It feels like a puzzle game that spent way too much time making itself look nice and ultimately forgot to make the puzzles worthwhile, and you just happen to have combat in it. The short length along with how cryptic the game is early on doesn't help matters either. Now, difficult games with a short length, I can understand. A lot of 80s and 90s era arcade games did that, but keeping the player engaged is the most important thing when you make a game like this. Making sure that even when the player loses, the player is having fun, that they feel the need to actually want to keep going, which, I will reiterate, was not happening with me with this game. Fun fact, during one of my recording sessions, I genuinely fell asleep. I have, no lie, never ever fallen asleep playing a game prior to this. That should tell you everything. I was playing level 2 around 11 PM that night. I closed my eyes for a brief second, and when they opened, it was half past midnight. So now I have footage of Kay standing in a room doing pretty much nothing for an hour, occupying my hard drive. There is some good in this, but it's all flash. Pre-rendered CGI can make any game from this time look okay if the artists are competent enough, which they clearly were here, but this effort doesn't feel like it was reflected in the gameplay. They could have done anything else other than this for a Men in Black game, but they didn't. I had low expectations going in. I can't say I'm entirely surprised. Maybe the PS1 version is better, I don't know. Even with the crummy games, I could still find some fun in them through glitchiness or general jank, but I wasn't able to do that with this. Even for its time, this was a weak game. I don't know what the game cost brand new, but it was probably way too much. It's safe to say that this game is going to go back on the shelf. I don't think I'm going to be revisiting it again anytime soon. Thank you for watching. Leave your thoughts down in the... This hour? Really? Hey, I just happened to be in the neighborhood and I was wondering if you had a copy of Men in Black the game. I've been trying to hunt down the game for a collection I'm building and I heard someone here had it. You alright? Sorry, you look like me. Like, exactly. I get that a lot. This is like the 4th house to say that. Do you have the game? Yeah. Hang on. Here you go, man. Spoiler alert, it's not that great. Fine by me. Thanks, dude. Want to see something cool? Sure. Nice prop. You some kind of cosplayer or something? You never played any Men in Black game. You misremembered with some other crappy Resident Evil knockoff you can't remember the name of. What you're gonna do now is get your ass back to your desk and go play some other game. Okay? Glad we understand each other. Have a nice day. H&M. Yeah, done and over with. I got the disc. Look, man, I might have been cloned from his brain, but I'm not as stupid as he is. I got his copy of Men in Black like we discussed. Wait a minute. God damn it, he put Frogger in the box.